Hello guys, and welcome back to a new tutorial. So this video is going to be the sewing part of our pants. The last video was the drafting part, so let's get right into it. So guys, I'm going to start by just taking this stay, and this is the hard one but not the hardest one, and I'm going to measure 7.5 inches and 7.5 inches by 1.5, as you see me doing right here. So after doing that, I am just going to cut it out and iron it to our front piece. This is for the pocket area of our pants. So I'm just going to cut it out as you see me doing here. So guys, this is the front of our pants. I just marked that X so you know that is the wrong side. So taking the stay I cut out, I am just going to iron it on the pants as you see me doing right here. And you're going to also do the same thing for the other side as you see me doing right here. So guys, I made a notch. I marked out 7 inches and made a notch as you can see, and I just flipped the pants as you see me doing by 2 inches, and I'm going to iron that as well. So I'm just going to iron in that 2 inches to create our pocket, and I'm going to do the same thing for the other one as well. So guys, this is the pocket. I just took that, and the part I told you not to throw away, we are just going to place it on the pocket, making sure that the right side is up, like the right side is facing up. I hope you understand. So I'm just going to place this here, and what we are going to do is, after placing this, right now this one is too long, so I'm just going to trim it off a bit. So what we are going to do now is we are going to sew this down, but when we get to this point here, we are going to fold it in like so, and just fold it in and just continue folding it towards this curved area the way you see me doing right here. So I hope you understand that part. Then we are going to take the second part and do the same thing on the opposite side of the pocket, the opposite side as opposed to the other one. So guys, when you are done sewing it, you should have something like this. So this is what mine is looking like. Like I was explaining, they are not on the same sides, they are both on opposite sides. So you should have something like this. So we are going to take this pocket and one of the pockets, and we are going to fold it to the wrong side, the side that has no black fabric on it. Then we are going to take one of our trouser piece, and from this ironing point, not exactly on the ironing point, you are going to sew. Just, I hope you can see what I'm doing. I am going to sew on that line, but not directly on the iron mark. I hope you understand what I'm saying. But I'm going to sew on that point. I'm going to sew a straight line following the ironed mark I have there, as you can see me doing right now. So after doing that, this is what we have right here. So next, what you are going to do, can you see the way I sewed mine? If you watch closely, I did not sew it directly on the iron line. So after sewing that, I'm just going to fold in those material you're seeing there. You can see what I'm doing. I'm just going to fold it in and sew, but I just want to trim out those excess material, and I'm just going to fold it and sew in. So as you can see, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm folding it in and I am sewing it down. Please do this carefully. I was having a bit of an issue with my machine while I was working on this video, so please make sure everything you're doing is smooth and straight. So guys, after doing that, you should have something like this. Some persons normally run a top stitch on it, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to give it a good press and leave it as it is, so it's going to look fresh and nice. So guys, after doing that, we are just going to turn this, making sure that the part that has the black fabric is visible. You are going to sew to close your pocket. You are sewing on the right side, meaning the part that has the dark fabric on it. I actually like the fact that I used another color for this for this reason. So we are going to be sewing. As you can see, we've already sewn across, and I'm just aligning everything properly, and we are going to run a top stitch on it after sewing the pocket close. So if you don't understand, let me try to give you a recap. After sewing the pocket, we turned it to the left side and we are sewing on it. We are sewing a top stitch on it, just as you see me doing right now. So after you are done, you should have something like this, but I don't want the pocket and the main fabric to be moving about, so I'm just going to sew it in place. So what I'm going to do is, from that point, I'm just going to sew it down and run a line where we have our pocket. So I'm going to do that for you to see. And as you can see, we have 2 inches. The 2 inches we removed, we now have it back there. So if you remove 2 inches and you don't have 2 inches back when you're done sewing, you're doing something wrong. So this is me just running a line just so the pocket and the fabric stays in place. So this is what we have. This is our pocket done. So guys, I just cut out a lining piece for the front part of our pants, just to make this look a little bit more fancy. This is totally optional. You can choose to do this, you can choose not to do this, but I wanted it to have a ready-made vibe when I was done. So this is 18 inches long, and we are just going to place it on our front piece and sew. We are going to sew it on top. You are not going to sew and turn. You are just sewing on top, and you are going to weave the mount. I do not have a weaving machine, but if you are open, if you have a weaving machine, you can do that. So this is what it's looking like after I was done sewing on it. Like I said, you're not sewing and turning, you're just sewing on it. So next, what we are going to do is we are going to sew but we are not going to sew totally to the top because we are going to add a zip to the front. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark 6.5 inches because that is how long I want my zip, the space I want my zip to occupy. So I'm just going to mark it out so I will know where I am sewing. So from that point I am just going to sew by ½ inch downwards. So here, those pieces I asked you not to throw away, this is where we need them. You are going to take one piece, making sure that the right sides are facing each other. So watch closely at what I'm going to do because this part is very important. So you're going to place it like so, leaving about ½ inches upwards, and you're going to fold it, making sure that the right sides are facing each other. So you're going to fold it like so. So we are bringing our zip in, and what we are going to do is we are going to place our zip on it. Please make sure you move your zip upwards a bit so the metal part is not showing, is not going to be at that point where you're going to sew later. So we are going to fold it and hold it together. As you can see, I'm moving the metal part upwards. So I'm going to hold it with my zip and my pants, and we are just going to sew very close. Please make sure you're doing this properly because you're not really seeing the zipper part that you're sewing. So just make sure you know what you're sewing so it comes out right. So I'm just going to sew it down. So guys, when you're done sewing, you should have something like this or even better. So we are going to grab the second piece. So we are going to take the second part like I said, and we are going to hold it on the other side, right sides facing each other and leaving a bit of allowance at the top. And we are going to sew by ½ inch as well. So when you're done sewing that, you're just going to open this place up and give it a good press. When you're done doing that, you're going to fold it in and as well give it a good press on this side as well so that everything is laying properly. Now I went ahead to give mine a good press and I brought it back. So we are moving to the next step. Please please pay close attention, guys. So right here, I am going to sew on it. I'm going to sew zip on the other side to make sure everything is laying properly. So I'm going to hold everything. I'm not holding the other parts, just this fabric you see me holding, and this as well as the zip. Please watch closely. I am holding just that fabric piece and I'm holding the zip. I'm going to open this up to make sure I do not sew on the other part, and I'm going to sew on my zip so that everything is laying nice and fresh and good. So I'm just going to sew on it. Please watch closely and try to follow up with what I'm doing. If you have any questions, please leave it in the comment section and I will be very happy to answer your questions. So this is what we have after sewing that part. Everything is now looking all good. So to finish up this part, we are going to sew guys, I've forgotten what this is called, please pardon me, but that stuff you see that's covering up like that, that's what we are going to do. So if you are going to have a hard time just sewing it direct, you can use your chalk and carve out how you want it to be before sewing, so you don't make any mistakes. So if this should be at least one quarter or 1 inch. So I'm just going to sew that, and as you can see, I'm opening it. I'm going to open that up to make sure I'm not going to sew on that other part. So please watch closely at what I'm doing. So from that point, I'm just going to sew following the markings I already have there. I'm just going to sew this. So guys, I did not want to make this video too long, that's why I had to speed up the process. But please, especially if it's your first time attempting this, please take your time and do this so you do not make any mistake. Take your time and do this, guys, please. So I just had to do it again so you guys can see what I am talking about. As you can see, I already have it marked out, but like I said, my machine was giving me issues, and I also wanted to show it to you guys again in case you missed the other part. You can sew it from the bottom, you can sew it from the top, whatever works for you. And as you can see, while I'm sewing, I'm making sure that I'm not sewing on the other part. Do this to make sure you do not get heartbroken when you sew and you found out that you've been sewing it on the other part as well, so you have to then lose it. So please make sure you are paying attention while you're sewing to avoid any mistakes. So after doing that, this is what we have, and this is what the back part is looking like. I'm just going to sew on that part so that place lays down. I don't want it to be moving. So on that bottom part, I'm going to sew it down. Can you see? I'm sewing down that part, the one I folded while I was fixing the zip. So I'm just going to run a stitch on that part. So now we are going to join our back piece to our front piece. So I'm going to start with the first part of our back piece. Please make sure right sides are facing each other, and I'm just going to hold everything, making sure everything is aligning properly, and sew it by 1/2 inch. But I'm not going to sew from the top. I am going to be sewing from the bottom, just so when I'm done and I have any excess, I am going to be trimming it off from the top. But I did not have any excess, so please make sure you're sewing from the bottom to avoid having excess at the bottom part. So if you have any excess, you're just going to have to trim it off at the top. But if you can sew from the top to bottom and you do not have any issues, please do what works for you. You do not have to do exactly what I did. So I'm just going to sew to the top and join everything. Now after joining our two back piece to the front piece, we are going to be joining we are going to join it at the back, that's the bum area. So I'm going to be imputing my measurements. I'm going to be imputing my measurements divided by 2. So this is my waist part. I'm going to add my waist measurement divided by 2, and I'm going to mark it, and I'm going to do the same for my hip, and I'm just going to mark the line. So because I do not want to mark my hip measurement at the wrong side, I just figured out from my waist to hip, I marked it and I imputed my measurements there. So I'm going to do the same thing and add my hip measurements and mark that out. After marking my measurements, I'm just going to draw this line you see me drawing here to connect my measurements together. And this is I like this method because it gives your your bum area, there's this balance and lapse that you get when you do it this way. So this is what it's looking like. I'm just going to curve that, and after curving, I am going to follow the markings that I made, and I am going to sew. And I just sewed down straight, following the markings I made, of course, but I forgot I was going to leave out 2 inches at the top. So after sewing, I still removed 2 inches. So I just had to put that out there. So following the markings, I just sewed and closed up the crotch line. So guys, like I said, at that back part, I was supposed to go down by 2 inches. So I'm just marking out my 2 inches so I can lose from the top to where I have that 2 inches. So I'm also running a stitch just so it's not going to lose while I'm doing what I'm about to do. So when you're doing yours, just leave out 2 inches before sewing. So guys, after doing that, we are just going to close the inner part of our pants so we can start working on our belt band, our waistband, whatever it is called. We're going to work on that. So we are just going to sew by 1/2 inch as well on this part up. So these are the waistbands we cut out earlier. Remember we did this adding your waist measurement plus 4 inches. So I ironed light stay on it, and I folded it in. This folding is depending on how wide you want your waistband to be. Mine is about one quarter is what I have, and I like it that way. If you want yours to be 1.5, it is okay. But if you want yours to be even wider, you can make it 2 inches. And on the other side, I just folded one part. I did not fold the two parts. I folded just one part. So this is what we have. So I cut out an extra fabric piece, and this is about 15 inches long, but I think I cut out another one just because this was not long enough, and this is by 1.5 inch. So we are just going to fold this in like this, fold it very well, and we are going to sew on both sides, and I'll come back to show you what it looks like. So after sewing, this is what we have. This is what it's looking like. So after that, I'm just going to cut out, I'm going to cut it by 3.5 inches. I later had to trim it off because 3.5 inches was too long for me. I do not really use really wide belts, and I cut out 6 of this. I'm going to use 6 of this, so I cut out 6 of this. So after that, we are going to mark out where they are going to be sitting on our pants. So at the front, we are just going to take 3 inches from this point. The way you see me doing right now, we are going to mark 3 inches. So that is where our first one is going to sit. And we are as well going to mark 3 inches from the other side. And we are going to mark it. That's where the second one is going to sit. And at the joining at the sides, we are going to have one on each side where we have our joining. Then at the back, as you can see the sewing mark, from that point I am going to mark 2.5 inches. So that's 2.5 inches where the next one is going to sit, and I'm going to as well mark another 2.5 inches, and that's where the last one is going to sit. After marking that part, we are going to take our waistband, and I decided I do not want to just sew the waistband as it is, so I decided to divide it. So I'm just going to cut this in two, and I'm going to cut the second one we have in two as well, but this is totally optional. You can just run it at once the way it is, but I decided to do this like this, so I'm just going to cut it in two. So guys, after cutting it in two, you're going to take one of each and you're going to hold them together. Just watch what I'm doing right here. Please pay attention as always. So you're going to sew on it, but see, you're not going to sew directly on where we have that ironed line there. You're going to go down slightly and you're going to sew a straight line. So you're going to move slightly and sew a straight line. I'll do that and show you what it looks like. So guys, I've sewn and I gave it a good press. So this is what we have after sewing. This is what it's looking like. So you can see that I went down slightly before sewing, so you can see the effects that it gives. So this is the second one. Don't forget to give it a good press. So now we are going to attach it to our pants, and we are going to do this together with our belt loop. We are going to join this at the same time we are joining our belt loop. So we are going to start joining this from the back. That opening we left at the back, that is where we are going to start joining our belt band. I'm calling it properly. So you can see what I'm doing. If you're a beginner, you can just pin this down and sew, but if you are a professional, or you can just do this very well without pinning it down, you can do whatever works for you. So from the back part, I am going to sew by half an inch, the half inch we left on the other side. So we are going to be sewing that, and as well we are also going to put our belt loops on the areas that we marked as we go. So when I start sewing, you're going to see me adding my belt loops. So guys, I'm just adding my belt loops as I go. Don't forget we marked out the areas where we are going to be placing them. So when I get to where I have the markings, I just add it and sew, and I continue sewing. So that is what I'm doing. So this is what we have. This is what our belt loops are looking like after I was done attaching the band and all together. So we are just going to work on the other side. We're just going to work on the other side and do the same thing we did for the first part to this part as well. But you can see me moving my band a bit by 1/4 of an inch, just so we can fold the front. So take note of that as well. So guys, after I was done, I just went ahead to cut off the excess that I had at the bum area so that everything will be laying very well. We don't want excess all over the place. So I just trimmed that out. So now we are going to close the back parts, that's 2 inches we left. So please pay close attention to what I'm about to do. So I'm just going to hold everything together. We have a bit of excess from the waistband, but just pay attention and look at what I am going to do. So I'm just aligning everything properly, holding them down, and I am just going to sew from the top to meet with that measurement we had at the bottom part. The measurement we took when we were taking our waist and hip measurements earlier, and we left out 2 inches. So we are just going to sew this to meet that one. I hope you understand, and please remember, if you have any questions, please leave it in the comment section and I will be happy to answer your questions. If you have any recommendations, please do not hesitate to let me know, and I'll try my best to make a video on your recommendation. So you can see now that I just sewed it to meet with that sewing line we already had before, and now I'm just going to trim out the excess we have as the waistband as well. I'm going to trim that out. So after trimming that out, I'm just going to open this and fold it down so you can see what we have. And that is why I said when you are sewing that band, you should move down a bit. So this is the effect it gives. You just open it up and then you fold it, and this is what you should have when you are done. So you can see what it's looking like right now. So guys, right now we are going to close up the front part of our band, and what you're going to do is you're going to hold it and you're just going to sew it down. This is why I said you should leave at least 1/4 inch so you can sew this and have a perfect finishing. So I'm just going to sew that out, trim off the excess and flip it to the other side. So when you're done, you should have something like this. So for this part, you can either fold it in or use a bias to sew on it, just so you should just so you will have a neat finishing when you're done. So please take note. So for the front, for the other side, I'm going to do the same thing that I did, and I'm just going to sew it and flip it over. After flipping it over, I'm just going to sew on that line you're seeing me about to sew. So I'm just going to sew on it so everything is laying perfectly. And please make sure you're sewing at that middle section so your thread does not show at the outer part of your pants. So make sure you're doing this with care. Please do this carefully so your thread is not showing. So you see me sewing this and you see that my thread was not visible even though I was sewing on top. So as you're sewing, you should just try your best to open up the middle section so you can have something to work with and prevent the thread from showing. So as I was sewing, I discovered that back part was bulging a bit, and I did not want that, so I just trimmed off a little bit of some excess as well, and I continued sewing. So guys, when you're done, this is what you should have. As you can see, my thread is not visible, but it's only visible on the left side. So that white area you're seeing there, if you do not want that to show, I advise you use your bias to seal it up. So guys, I do not want this video to be too long because it is already too long. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to explain to you what I'm going to do with the zipper loop. So I'm just going to sew on that part by 1/2 inch, fold it in the way I'm doing right now, and fold that part in and sew at the top as well as the bottom part, so that we will have a neat finishing. So you should have something like this. So guys, like I said, I am just going to go down by 1/2 inch at that zipper loop area, and I'm going to run a stitch at that point, as you see me doing right now. After that, what you're going to do is you're just going to lift it up and fold the remaining parts you have at the top. Mine was a bit too long, so I had to trim it off again, and I folded it in, and I'm just going to run a stitch on it, and you are done. That is what you should have for the remaining 5, because we have 6, and I'm doing this one to show you what it looks like. So I'm just going to do the other ones off camera. I just did this so you can see what it looks like, because I do not want this video to be too long, because it is already long as it is. So this is what you should have when you are done. So guys, after that, what you're going to do next is give everything a good press, and at the bottom part you are going to fold in your allowance and iron it very well, and add your hemming gum, and we are done. So this is the final result. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on my next video. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe. Turn on the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I upload a new video. Bye.